Hey everyone, Vince Nero here, Director of Content Marketing. But today I'm coming to you as Vince the Lobster for today's spooky content marketing takedown. We're taking down one of the spookiest sites of all time, HalloweenCostumes.com. So HalloweenCostumes.com, they do a lot of things right. They do a lot of things that I think can be improved. So we're just gonna jump through a handful of different things, and I'll try to point out the spookiest stuff that I can. So very first thing that I see on HalloweenCostumes.com is actually kind of like a cautionary tale. So this isn't necessarily affecting them per se that I can see, but looking at their H1 on the page, actually, it's really hidden. It's really small. It's not the most prominent thing on the page. This is kind of like a tip that goes with any type of page that you have, but Google has said that although it doesn't really matter to them what you tag a type of text as, it should be the most prominent thing if you want to convey to Google that it's important. So the fact that this is very small, smaller than a lot of these other headers on this page, doesn't really convey importance to me. So next thing that I see kind of scrolling through their homepage is this big hunk of text here, this body copy, I guess. And now, this is a standard practice for most large e-commerce sites, I'd say, where basically they put a bunch of copy at the very bottom of the page. It has some keywords in there, and Google, I think one way or the other, people are kind of hesitant to remove something like this because they're probably ranking, and obviously this is an important page. So what I wanted to do though is show you an example of another site that actually does this better, has some larger text, and I think what you want to do in this instance is I think you can kind of get the best of both worlds. You can get keywords in there, but if you kind of sprinkle them throughout the page, kind of like Zappos does. So Zappos doesn't have a ton of copy. They don't really have this body copy chunk at the bottom. If you scroll all the way down, you don't actually even see it. But what Zappos does that I like, if you scroll up here, is for some of their sections, they actually add like a little copy here. And this is one easy way to get some keywords usage in here, but also just to provide value to the user. All right, so let's get back to Halloween costumes here. And we're going to take a quick second to look at the site navigation at the top. So this is one of the first things that popped out to me, maybe one of the spookier things that they do here. But uh, they basically have this top category section going down the left. And then once you get into these drop downs, they are full of pretty much everything that they carry. Incredibly kind of overwhelming to me as the user to see something like this where every single theme they have has its own spot in the navigation. Now, I think, for the user, you want to try to provide what you can in terms of what is most important, right? So, do we really need to see every single theme on here? I would, one good tip would be prioritizing by search volume, or a study by Nielsen Norman Group that basically said that if you give more options, the people are less likely to click on things, right? Let's compare this to like Party City, for instance. Looking at Party City's navigation, if you look at their Halloween costumes, they don't have a ton, but you know exactly what the most important things are. Their featured costumes are right here. This kind of entices the user to click through to these, so you can kind of urge the user towards the most important parts. I don't think Google is necessarily going to really penalize you for something like this, but in just for the UX standpoint alone, I think it's worth going through something like this and making sure that you're including only the most important things. Not to mention that most of these costumes listed here, a lot of them are also listed here. So you kind of have like a doubling going on here. Last thing in the site navigation, let's just check the footer real quick. One of the things that I like actually about this footer is there's not a ton of extra links here. For the most part, you want to, again, stick to the most important stuff. You don't want to refill, you don't want to double up a lot of the site links that are in the navigation. You don't want to put them in the footer. So I think for the most part, they did a pretty good job. They have a pretty good call to action here for their blog. Some of these other things are probably pretty important to them. Tracking your order for an e-commerce site like this makes sense. So let's visit the blog. Halloween costumes Very interesting. They do a lot of things right, I think, in the blog. The biggest, most interesting thing to me, I guess, is what does a seasonal company like this do in the off season, right? How can you create content that's evergreen, that's going to last through the whole year cycle? Doesn't just have to do with Halloween, right? So costumes in general, I think that's basically where they're at. Anything that has to do with costumes. So looking at Ahrefs and looking at their site, some of the things that they're doing well are these types of kind of pop culture sci-fi movie tie-ins, superhero movies, pretty much anyone that wears a costume, right? Some of their best posts are like this one, the Shield of Superman. It's like an evolution of his logo. Let's look at another one. They do this evolution of, this is Lara Croft, a video game and movie. But again, this is like the evolution of type of content. And that's something that they've kind of leaned into. So you want to make sure you're giving a bigger variety in these instances, because leaning into one of these ideas, you're going to play it out pretty quickly. And they've gone, if you look into their backlog of posts, they've gone into every type of movie, every type of superhero they can and lean into this. So this Terminator timelines piece, for instance, while this is a little diverse, right? I know I just said they need a little more diverse content. This is getting a little bit out of that evolution of, right? So that's kind of good to see. But what I don't necessarily love about this infographic piece itself is this really, really small text. So that would be one thing that I'd recommend, is making sure that you upgrade the size of the text, be in touch with where your mobile users are looking at, and yeah, making sure you're optimizing for those users. Let's pop up really quickly to the top. One thing I did want to mention is the navigation on this site. So the blog is actually a slightly different navigation than the homepage itself. So let's pop back to the homepage here, and you'll see the homepage has a search bar, then they have all their categories. But then when you get into the blog, we're actually seeing a much pared down version of this. They only have three navigation here categories: the adult costumes, kids, and decorations. Whereas again, if you go back to the other one, it's all of their categories. Now, what this kind of does is breaks the continuity between the two. So if I'm on the blog, it doesn't make it as easy for me to buy, right? Because you can't pop up here and just decide, oh, I want to just like Terminator, I'm going to find a Terminator costume easily. Whereas if you were on the homepage and they had all these, it might be easier for you to find something like that. Also, just from a user standpoint, I feel like it's kind of weird to break this mold. It doesn't feel 100% like it fits. One last thing I want to touch on is just their content in general. If you really, really want to lean into this pop culture realm, what you need to do is really invest in artwork, animation, interactivity. Those are the types of pieces that are really winning in these types of pop culture, in the pop culture realm. For instance, let's take a look at this piece. This is really winning. It's got a ton of backlinks. This is made by an artist, but it's basically a timeline of Star Wars. And it goes all the way through the movie with these awesome illustrations, really well done, really unique design. Let me just show you this other example, this Pop Chart Labs. This gets a lot of play in this space, and Pop Chart Labs is known for doing these really big, going all out types of content where they dive really deeply into a topic. And I think that is what you need to do to win in this type of space. So all right, last thing I wanted to show you is another piece that I saw on their site, and I actually really like what they're doing here. What I think they could do better in something like this, if you are doing these types of videos, these types of tutorials, is build out the posts a little bit and give the user stepwise, give them, maybe they don't want to actually watch the video, maybe they want to just go through and read something. There's no necessarily a shareable asset here. So if somebody wanted to share this or reshare it on their site, there's nothing that's here that they can necessarily grab easily. So let's just quickly compare that to something like Shutterfly. I know it's not a one-to-one comparison, but here's how-to video on hanging pictures on a wall. Again, this is a direct tie-in to their product offering, similar to Halloween costumes. And they have the video at the start, but what they do here, what I like, is as you go through, they actually break it down in these nice visuals. They tell you a little list of the products that you're going to need and give you like a step-by-step, as well as these are the same steps that occur in that video, but it's a step-by-step breakdown as well as the video. All right, so after all that, let's talk about the grade. I think Halloween costumes, they've done a lot of things well. They've a lot of room to improvement, especially in the blog side of things and the design. So overall, I think the site grade we're going to give as a C+. Again, they are ranking for Halloween costumes, which is, their #1 goal. And these other types of things they can do is to level up that content marketing strategy across the board, and it's going to give them some breathing room in the off season. Hopefully you like what you see today. If you did, please give a thumbs up, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments if there's other rooms to improve here. And that's it for today. Happy Halloween. Ooh, spooky lobster.